and the Goleta City Council. It is Thursday, November 19th, 2009. We are coming to you from the Dos Pueblos High School Library. Thank you so much to Dos Pueblos for hosting us. We are going to start with a roll call, if Dr. Sarvis would like to go ahead and do that.
Good. We'll start with the Board of Education members. Kate Parker.
Here.
Ed Herron.
Here.
Annette Cordero, not here yet. Robert Noel.
Here.
And Susan Deacon.
Here.
Thank you.
And members of the City Council, Mayor Aceves.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hanan.
Here.
Councilmember Bennett.
Here.
Councilmember Connell.
Here.
And Councilmember Easton.
Here.
Thank you. We will now rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And we do have Spanish translation available.
We have Alma Flores. Alma, would you please introduce yourself at the podium?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Alma Flores y si necesitan los servicios de traducción estoy disponible. Gracias.
Thank you. And we also have headsets available if you need those to improve your hearing. At this time, we will go ahead and take a public comment. We do have one speaker on public comment, and that is, two speakers on public comment, thank you. First off, it's Kate Smith. And you will have 3 minutes at the microphone.
Under whose rules of meeting are we going by this afternoon?
The Santa Barbara School Board.
I'd like to appeal that because Santa Barbara School Districts has a limit of only 3 items, and I would like to speak on 4. I'd like to appeal that to the group because it was an arbitrary decision to let the school district choose the rules of meeting. And I'm hoping that you're not going to force me to use up my 3 minutes of public comments for you to
No, Mrs. Smith.
know what.
No, you will not be able to speak on 4 items. We'll speak on 3.
Okay. My name is Kate Smith. There is school and government corruption. There is systemic and systematic violations of state and federal law, and there is criminal activity within the Santa Barbara school districts. There is retaliation against whistleblowers, and that would be parents, teachers, administrators, and students. There is waste, fraud, corruption. I don't have the time to go through it. I'll let you know that there was a tour, which was not videotaped, of this incredible school, Dos Pueblos. Dos Pueblos is the school of our dreams. Dos Pueblos is the school our children need and deserve. Every place they visited is an incredible, progressive program that the teacher has to fund by itself. There was a grant that the videographer was able to receive from the Santa Barbara school districts, but it was never implemented. It is past the deadline for implementation. There was no implementation for the video conferencing grant that was awarded to the Santa Barbara school districts for 100 and I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars. Their hope was that they could save money by having a French teacher at one school and have teachers in another school benefit from her teaching all by themselves without a teacher. The
30
grant
seconds.
The grant has not been implemented, and I suggest that the school districts hire immediately a grant writer for the Grants for Innovation from the federal government, and I am putting the Santa Barbara school districts on notice. We are in breach of settlement contract, and I am a
Thank you very much,
thermonuclear
Mrs. Smith.
device.
Next up is Mr. John Dent.
Thank you very much. I am a teacher here at Dos Pueblos and very proud of what we do here. I do teach the yearbook, and the yearbook program I took over last year. Our yearbook was an award-winning, recognized by the National Scholastic Press Association yearbook, covering over 6,000 images, over 200 different stories, and it is a yearbook that our school is very proud of. It tries to encompass the feeling on this campus, which is unique from many other campuses across the country. Last year we had a program come from LA that does a teen life evaluation and helps kids talk about real life teen issues. When they were here, they walked out on the campus and they said, after being here for 3 hours, this is a different feeling than any other campus they've been to out of the 120 different campuses across the United States than they had ever been to. The theme of last year's yearbook really encompasses what that feeling is, and that is peace, love, Dos Pueblos. And it's that feeling that on this campus there is no place that a student can't go, that there is no place that a student can't feel welcome. There is no hallways that this group belongs to this spot and another group belongs to another spot. And that's not normal in the United States on campuses. And it's something that people feel when they're here on this campus, and it's something that we as teachers are very proud of, and the students feel very, very comfortable and loved here. I'd like to present this yearbook to Goleta City Council, and hope that you get a chance to look through it, read some of the stories, and learn a little bit about Dos Pueblos High School, the feeling, the real community that we have right here on our campus.
Thank you. Mayor Aceves is... Thank you. That was very kind, Mr. Dent. We will now move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is a statement of purpose for the joint meeting. And Mayor Aceves, I don't know if you'd like to start on that?
I'd love to start. Good afternoon. One of the goals that I had as mayor was to initiate this annual meeting of the Santa Barbara School District and the Goleta City Council. To this end, I would especially like to acknowledge Dr. Sarvis and his staff, Mr. Singer and his staff, for making this happen. The purpose of this meeting, in my opinion, is to emphasize that our council should be essential partners in improving our public schools. Understanding that we do not have authority over the school districts, we as elected officials should work in partnership with the school district. Towards this goal, we are meeting first with the school district, Santa Barbara School District, and I hope that we schedule a meeting with the Goleta Union School District, Dr. Boomer, sometime next year. We should commit today to annual meetings of our board. We should also encourage the frequent meetings and discussions among our staffs so that we establish a solid relationship, and as such, continue an open dialogue exploring the areas of common concerns. With this dialogue, we should, as an example, identify policies that have either been enacted or proposed that affect the entire community. We should share issues and concerns, and by way of example would be with our land use planning and how that has a direct relationship, direct or indirect impact to the district and vice versa. So in conclusion, the city of Goleta is only 7 years old. We have a vibrant community of 30,000 people. We understand that forming partnerships has been a key to many of our successes. So I would encourage both the city, our Goleta staff and the district staff to work together to develop joint use agreements agreements that avoid duplication and allows leveraging of our limited resources. Sharing information and resources only makes for good governance, and thus removing obstacles is certainly a recipe for success. Again, thank you to all our staffs. Thank you to Kate and your board and our council for making this first meeting successful, to make it happen. And our principal, Mr. Swans, thank you very much for your tour. You have a beautiful campus. My son and many children from many of our council members attended the school here. And I remember when my son was playing football here, he was promised to play in the stadium. So every year, I'd ask Dr. Sarvis, is it going to be this year? Is it going to be this year? So I'm glad that this is the year it happened, and that we did participate in the dedication of Scott O'Leary Field. So congratulations. Thank you for the tour of your campus. Madam President.
Thank you. And the only thing that I would add to that is that the Santa Barbara School Board a few years ago instituted joint meetings with the Santa Barbara City Council. And with that, we did find tremendous benefit. We've looked forward to meeting with our other city partner, and I'm so glad that that was able to come forward. We're a very large secondary district that runs from Montecito all the way up to El Capitan. So your young citizens are actually going to all of our schools, even the ones that are outside the city limits. And so I know that you're paying attention and care about the entire community, even the ones that overflow outside the boundary, because everything that we do affects your young citizens. So I look forward to this being an annual meeting as well. And now we will start running down our agenda. Items 6, 7, and 8 are based on written reports, as you can see. We have public comment at least on one of those items. And board members, you may have questions, so I'll take them one by one. Number 6 is the report on school districts and city collaboration on environmental and sustainability programs. Do any council or board members have comments or questions that they want to raise on that? No? Mrs. Deacon?
As a school board, we did hear this report earlier, but I just wanted to weigh in on the importance of building sustainable schools and retrofitting our schools so that they can be part of the green movement. And I know our students are very much dedicated to that, and so I'm glad that the school board is moving ahead on this. It's a long process. It'll take a lot of work, but it's something that I know our board is very much committed to. And in this report, we see that Dos Pueblos' roofs might be a possible place for some solar panels, so that's something to think about down the line. So I just wanted to make sure that we underscore how much we are really invested in sustainable schools.
Thank you. Mrs. O'Connell?
Well, I would just say that it's a very impressive list of things you have done and the things you're planning to do. And if down the road we build ourselves a city hall, then I think there are a lot of ideas here that we can work with to make sure that we have the most sustainable building we can, that we can afford.
Thank you, Mrs. Connell. Any other comments? All right, let's move on to item 7, which is, again, a written report on response to the state budget crisis and economic crisis. We do have public comment on this item, so with no objection, I'll go ahead and take that. It is Ms. Kate Smith. Okay. Any other comments on this one? All right. Item 8, report on the status of student achievement. Questions or comments? All right, let's go ahead and move on to item 9 then, which is the presentation on the status of city and school capital projects.
Well, thanks to the citizens of our South Coast community, larger community, and that included many citizens here in Goleta, the school district was provided with bond money through Measure V 2000 a number of years ago. That's $67 million provided through bond funding was added to by accessing state matching funds to the tune of over $40 million. And we are now reaching the end of a period of refurbishment and construction in our secondary district. Our secondary district includes all the junior highs and high schools here on the South Coast, with the exception of Carpinteria Public Schools. And you see, council members and board members, you see a road to renovation document in front of you. This is a new document. We're just getting it out. You will see a lot of the projects shown, and you'll see a detailed list of the thousands of dollars that we have put into these capital improvements. To report on this, we have Dave Hetjunk, who's our Director of Facilities and Operations, and Dave has provided additional backup material in your packet. Dave?
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis, members of the board, Madam President, and the City Council, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to be here to speak to you for a few minutes about the Measure V bond issue, which was passed by the voters in 2000. Two schools within the city limits of Goleta were affected by this, Dos Pueblos High School and Goleta Valley Junior High School. The numbers in my attachment are slightly different than the numbers in the road to renovation, and that difference is donations. The road to renovation doesn't really break out the amount of money that was donations. It's broken out in my staff report. We were very fortunate that the community members, especially from Goleta and from outside of Goleta, gave generously towards the aquatic center, the Ealing's Aquatic Center here at Dos Pueblos High School, to enable that pool to be twice as large as a district standard pool would have been. It's a benefit for the district, it's a benefit for the community, it's used all the time, as those that are trying to schedule the pool will tell you. And then we also, the other major project on the Measure V renovations was the construction of the new theater building on campus. We were always referred to it as renovations because it primarily was renovations. The Division of State Architect considered that pool project a renovation because the pool existed and it was enlarged even though it was in a different location where the theater was considered a new construction project. Those were the two main construction projects in Goleta. I think Principal Swanitz and the community will both tell you they're pleased to finally have a complete high school, including a stadium with visitors bleachers and lights. And it was a long time coming, but thanks to the voters, thank you very much to the voters who approved the bond issue, we were able to complete those projects. I wasn't able to make the tour today. I apologize for that. I was with legal counsel for both sides for a lawsuit that we settled approximately 7 years ago for Americans with Disabilities Acts, and we were doing a final walkthrough at some of our school sites. Majority of our bond funds, not a majority, but a good portion of our bond funds were spent on providing accessibility, which benefits all students, not just those students that require the access. Everyone gets to use a new accessible restroom. Everybody gets to use the ramps, the handrails. They benefit the whole community, and we're proud of that effort also. I'm here to mainly say thank you to the voters, and thank you for being here today. Hopefully you enjoyed your tour, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Easter.
I have a comment. You passed this bond issue just as I was arriving in Santa Barbara from the east. And so when my neighbor came over to my back door waving his county tax bill and what is this bond issue for high schools? I couldn't tell him. I'll take this to him and say read every word. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I just have a question. I'm wondering about joint use of facilities, but perhaps this is coming under like item 11 or even perhaps under 10 rather than this item.
And I'm not sure.
Actually, item 11 was designed to talk about student activities, and we have some facilities use in that item. But you can go ahead and bring it up now.
Well, no, that's fine. I can wait for that.
Okay, great.
Any others? One question, is this road to renovation up on the web yet?
Yes,
It is up on the web? Great, thank you. This is beautiful. I mean, I wish this is something that we could print off in color and send to every single one of the voters so that they could see what's been going on, but obviously we can't afford to do that. So hopefully they'll all look at the web. But thank you, this is
It is
great.
not final yet, accounting for all of the dollars, but 95% of the dollars are projects complete that are in this document. There will be probably one more update. But I don't think the numbers for the two schools that we're interested in today will change.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hetyoung.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I might now introduce our Community Services Director, Mr. Steve Wagner, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the city's efforts in keeping the infrastructure and the areas around these school facilities up to the standards that we would like.
Super, thank you.
Mr. Wagner, who is a graduate of Dos Pueblos High School.
He stole my thunder.
Except he told me this afternoon when he asked where exactly we were meeting, I said the library. He said, I'm going to have trouble remembering where that was. I don't think I visited it very often. He has achieved his civil engineering degree and other accomplishments, so notwithstanding the limited time he might have spent in this room, he's got plenty of achievements.
Superintendent Sarvis, board members, council members, mayor, Steve Wagner. I'm the Community Services Director for the City of Goleta. I thought I'd give just a brief overview of the city's capital improvement program and highlight a few projects that are of special interest, perhaps, to district board members. First of all, our capital improvement program is about $190 million currently. It's a long-range capital improvement program that covers everything you would think a city would need to deal with: roads, bridges, drainage, facilities, quite varied and very aggressive for a town our size. And part of the reason is because over the years, deferred maintenance and the needs for different type of infrastructure, we've really identified a fairly lengthy list of needed improvements in the future. Go ahead and go to the next slide. A few of these that I want to talk about relate to the schools, the Santa Barbara School District particularly, in access to and from schools and safe routes to school. As you know, Highway 101 divides our community in half. And getting from one side of the freeway to the other, people have to use one of four interchanges. And as those interchanges become more congested due to development both inside and outside of the city in Isla Vista and UCSB, those crossings become more and more dangerous for others using them, perhaps, for instance, pedestrians and bicyclists. So part of the capital improvement plan strategy the city has adopted is to increase the number of crossings across Highway 101. One that's actually in progress for construction next year is a replacement of the Hollister Interchange. It's a replacement of the Winchester overcrossing clear out on the west side. This will line up directly from where Cathedral Oaks comes down and tees into Cali Real, coming straight across over a new bridge, over the railroad and a new bridge, tying into Hollister on the south side. That was a cooperative project and about $9 million project with Caltrans. That's recently been bid out, and that will start construction early next year. The next one on the slide, in the middle of that slide, it's called the Elwood Overcrossing. This is one of two new overcrossings the council identified as part of their transportation element, again to provide additional overcrossings over 101 to help reduce the congestion at the existing interchanges with the highway. This would be an overcrossing similar to, if you're familiar with the Mitchell-Torrena overcrossing, 2 lanes, bike paths, and sidewalks without the ramps to give people a safe way to get across all 3 modes, in car, on foot, and on bicycle. This is a long-range project. There's funding in the Measure A that was recently approved for this project. This would be paid through a combination of development impact fees, Measure A funds, and other state and federal funding. Another crossing shown here on the right is a pedestrian overcrossing. This was actually a concept that was initiated prior to incorporation of the city that we're carrying forward. It's not funded currently, but it's in our capital program for future construction, again, to provide alternate ways to get across the highway. Those are the three long-range and near-term capital projects, I think, in the vicinity of Dos Pueblos that I wanted to highlight of interest. The next slide is a project near Goleta Valley Junior High, and this is one we're excited to report on because we recently received grant funding for intersections improvements at the Berkley Fairview intersection. And if any of you have tried to cross that intersection, as a lot of our school children do, going or to or coming from Goleta Valley Junior High, it's a harrowing experience with the speed of traffic on Fairview. There's a identified accident concern rate there that we're looking to mitigate through the installation of full signalization. So the signals would be installed at that intersection to provide safe crossing for bicyclists and peds to and from the school along an identified safe route to school. This project's scheduled for installation because of the grant funding, I believe next summer. So those are just a few of the projects within our capital program that I wanted to highlight. Again, special interest towards the school districts and kind of showing that our commitment is to provide safety for all residents, all modes, and particularly in and around school zones. The other thing we do on an annual basis as part of an annual street improvement program is we've invested heavily over the first now 7 years, I can't believe it's been 7 years, in the streets and repairing the streets and road infrastructure. For those of you who've been here around long enough, if you remember how Alameda was for years and how deteriorated the pavement got, it was great. We kind of timed that with your project here on campus, trying to hold off as long as we could. And when we knew you were about to be done, we scheduled that work to provide a nice, smooth, and repaved roadway out front. We also work closely with the Parent Traffic Safety Committee to identify better, safer ways. I know traffic congestion in and around schools is very difficult. There's a lot of concerns. You probably hear a lot of parents come to you directly. We do too. Whenever we can get together and work on things to make things more safe, we're very interested in that and more than willing to work with you and look forward to continue that relationship into the future. That's it if there's no questions. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions?
I actually had one question. What is the fate of the existing overpass at Hollister once the new one is built?
That will be removed, torn down, because it was built with something called reactive aggregate, the local supply that was used in a lot of our concrete structures back in the mid-50s, used a rock source that actually, over time, reacts with the cement in concrete. And if you go on that crossing, they did a retrofit to try to save it for some time, but it's cracking, it's falling apart, it's very deteriorating, in a deteriorated condition. It was the number one bridge. It was the last bridge left on a replacement program in the state. The state was very interested in getting that replaced. So if you go across it, go across fast.
I go across it.
Don't spend a lot of time on that bridge.
I go across it probably twice at least every day.
You probably see the cracks.
I know there was some hope that it might remain as a pedestrian overpass, but I guess not.
Yeah, they have to take it down.
Thank
you very much.
My questions on those are, you have an estimated start date for that particular project. Do you have a completion estimation for that one?
The Hollister Interchange, again, starts early next year, and I believe it's about a 2-year construction time frame for a project of that magnitude over the freeway and the railroad. It takes time. Not as long as it would if it were actually replacing a bridge in an existing bridge location. So this is kind of nice because we're bringing it into a new alignment so they can actually go and do the work without impacting traffic flow until the very end of the project when they switch traffic over and then go across the new bridge. So probably 2 years.
Great. And for the Elwood overcrossing, do you have an estimate of when you think that might start?
That's in early phase of development right now. And if money weren't a problem or weren't a challenge, let's say that, if money was available, I think the earliest we could get that approved and ready for construction is about 5 or 6 years. So we're going to go on that time frame. Money, though, with the state budget, we all know where the state budget is, and state transportation funding is very difficult right now. And so that project's really going to be timed with available funding. The earliest it could be would be 5 or 6 years. It's probably going to be somewhat longer than that.
And my last question on this is, do you have more detailed drawings where people can like really see, for example, the interchange and how that's going to look, like on your website or
We
Caltrans
actually do for Hollister, because that's going to construction. We have concept alignment alternatives for the Elwood, and then kind of a concept detailed on the pedestrian overcrossing. So we do have those. I don't think they're on the website because of their size, but that's a good idea, because as these things come closer and people want to know what's being done, that's part of our public outreach education. We'd like to put that on the website, so we make a note of that and make that happen.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what that exactly is going to look like. Any other comments or questions on this? All right, let's go ahead and move on to item 10. And that is the presentation on the school districts and cities' collaboration in response to youth violence.
Let me start with the school district and what we've been doing, and then we'll draw in the governmental agencies here. We've been working with governmental and youth-serving organizations. In fact, we have 172 youth-serving organizations that we work with in our school district in various capacities. They provide great activities for kids. Many of them are involved in programs working with drug and alcohol abuse, just a number of social problems as well. And many of them, many of their activities are really a primary deterrent to violence and deal with student safety issues. The death of Angel Linares 2.5 years ago changed what we were doing with various agencies and really gave rise to a new collaboration. And this has been evolving as a community-wide response to youth violence. And we have some slides we need to get up on the screen. Okay, we need, oh, is Mark working on it? Oh, good, good. We have the low-tech cover here, which is the low-tech solution. There we go. I love that solution. The city of Santa Barbara has taken a lead in this collaborative, and you're going to see a lot of different organizations that have really come together, come to the table in a new way that has not happened in the past. I'd like to start with the way that this is envisioned for the community, and whether it's the city of Santa Barbara or whether it's kids here in this area. Let's take a look at the next slide, because to deal effectively with the problem, we have different levels of involvement. At the core, we have kids who are closely involved with gangs. And then we have successive circles of those who are somewhat aligned, and then those that are more outliers, and those who are at risk, therefore, of becoming involved in gangs. And this gang involvement, this gang culture, has everything to do with primarily young men establishing themselves as young adults. And it's a cycle of violence that we must break. To deal with this effectively, we have a number of tiered interventions that we're using, and we're talking about using more. There have been a number of collaboratives that have formed, organizations that never worked together before. Dan Singer and I sit on one of the boards that you'll see, and city council members and board members will have representatives at another level. We have, and let's go to the next slide, we have a number of different, well, this is just a visualization of how a number of different community influences need to play their part in this, because this very much needs to be a community response to youth violence. No one agency can take this on. You can't simply police it out of existence. You can't simply provide training up front. There are certain levels that demand intervention. There are certain levels that demand training, and there are a lot of things being done here. We'll spend some time talking about these. In fact, this is one of the major items on our agenda today. Let's go to the next slide. Dan, do you want to take it at this point? Okay.
So as Dr. Sarvis has indicated, the approach here is really a multifaceted one, and it's to utilize existing resources, not to create new structures, because the services are out there, but connecting them together like a web is what the approach that the city of Santa Barbara initiated, and we've all really kind of endorsed. If you can see that slide, you have it in front of you too, you can see that there's a multi-pronged approach to reaching out to the students that are of that center target of the most critical level. I think if we go to the next slide. So what's been created is a structure that allows for some multiple layers, starting with a leadership council, which is made up of community officials. As Dr. Sarvis said, our Mayor Aceves sits on this council, as does a representative from, well, there's a total of 9 elected officials, 2 founding officers, someone from UCSB, families, youth, business, and faith communities. And they're there kind of as an advisory group to talk about the implementation of the various measures being taken to help reach out to these youth. And then below that is the Executive Council. Both Dr. Sarvis and I sit on that council. We meet roughly quarterly. That effort is supported then by staff, an executive director, which currently is in the city administrator's office in the city of Santa Barbara, but we'll be meeting actually just in 2 weeks to talk about, since that person's retiring, to talk about how we continue to sustain some funding and support for either a full-time or part-time position to help coordinate all of these various efforts. But then in addition, the opportunity to work with intervention groups, the city's Parks and Recreation department, caseworkers, outreach specialists. When you look at the network, both with probation, faith community, special nonprofit groups, outreach groups, youth groups, bringing them all together from kind of a caseworker perspective. And so this is the structure that's been set up. We've put in your material some description that we're not going to spend too much time on this afternoon that helps to describe what each of these components are. So I think we've got a couple of slides that you can skip that one. There's a little description of that leadership council. And Mark, if you'll just kind of quickly thumb through the purpose that I've talked to, an executive council, and the purpose there. And then the slides that actually go into the description of what the executive director, the caseworker, and the prevention and intervention program is all about. And as I said, you have that material in front of you, so you can wait. Back up there, Mark, for 1 second.
I think this one's particularly important. Take a look at all of the organizations on this list. These are organizations that have worked with kids in many ways, in very diverse ways. And each of them is ramping up their efforts to provide activities that are healthy activities to get kids occupied, to direct them in pro-social ways. And, you know, each of them has their own turf as well. And this is a process that has broken down some of these lines and really allowed them to work more cooperatively with each other. We identify certain students and certain young adults in the community who are at the core of the very first slide that you saw, and we have case managers who work with those people. In fact, the board provided an outreach worker to work not with that group per se, but the next group out, those that were at risk and had some sort of gang affiliation, and that's been very effective. We've worked with kids who are coming out of probation, kids who have some record, who have known gang affiliation, and who have been problem citizens already as kids, and have worked with them to get them involved in jobs, to get them involved in activities that are going to direct them in appropriate ways. And our board has seen reports on this, and we'll be sending information to the city council as well as we get reports of the success of these activities. In fact, we've had 2 summers now where we've really case managed a number of students who we were particularly concerned about, and the results have been good. Well, we think that needs to continue. We think this needs to continue. There's no one thing that should be done that will solve all of this. I mean, it really is a community effort. It really involves the families in our communities, tremendous importance, the families in our communities, and how we work with our kids.
So what you've seen is what represents really a regional effort to address youth violence, gang issues, and community-based issues. What we want to do is turn a little attention to what's happening here in Goleta, especially with the Dos Pueblos campus and the junior high campus, and to some extent the interaction with San Marcos, because they're really all part of the Goleta area. And to do that, we have Lieutenant Phil Willis, our Chief of Police here, and also Vito Adamaitis. Vito serves in many roles. He is our redevelopment, neighborhood services, and public safety director. And so he also works very closely with our police and fire functions, code compliance, neighborhood issues, neighborhood watch programs. So they're all interconnected.
It's very interesting, Doctor, members of the council, school board, that we didn't have an opportunity to review each other's slides. So these are the ones that we in the sheriff's department, and I hadn't seen his slides and he hasn't seen mine, so it's interesting that they're going to be kind of redundant. Although ours is a much more narrowed base, because all the various community services that we utilize and that rely upon the sheriff's department, they're so intertwined that the definitions and the walls between them are really breaking down, and we're all literally working for the same goal. And some of the units we work with are the Sheriff's Department Gang Outreach with Ismael Huerta, Community Action Commission with Saul Serrano, Gang Risk Intervention Program with Kevin Terry, Fighting Back with Tony Rincon, Zona Seca with Kevin Smith, Santa Barbara Police Department Task Force, which was just discussed with Fred Razzo, various parent-teacher presentations, and one of the rising stars is the Parent Project, English as a Second Language, with Linda Gorenia. And secondarily, we work with Los Campañas, Smiling Faces, and most importantly, from our school resource deputy, is the one-on-one relationship that currently they develop with current students and former students. It's the ability to know them name one-on-one, identify them, and know these risk factors that have previously been identified when they're coming onto campus. In law enforcement, there's a very technical method to go about identifying someone as a legal gang member and associate gang member. Very stringent, and I do not believe the school board uses the exact same criteria, because ours is legally bound and there is no flexibility whatsoever. In the South Coast, there are 3 identified gangs. I'm not going to give them the credit of mentioning them by name. Membership in all 3 has declined rather drastically. Legal definition from the law enforcement standpoint from 2007 to 2009, and specific information for the Dos Pueblos campus. In 2008, there were 8 felony arrests. 3 of them were gang-related. In 2009, there have been 4 felony arrests, 0 of them gang-related. 2008, there was 37 misdemeanor arrests, 7 of them were gang-related. 2009, there have been 17, with 4 of them gang-related. Criminal citations in 2008, there were 66, with 12 of those gang-related. 2009, 62, with 7 of them gang-related. Criminal offense reports taken on campus, the Dos Pueblos campus. 2008, there were 22, 3 of them gang-related. In 2009, 11, with 0 of them gang-related. It would really be nice to see if this trend continues, if it's long-term, or if it's a blip on the radar screen. I would really like to think that these various collaborative efforts are to be credited with this, but it's going to take a longer duration, a smoothing over time, to see if it really is a success, and I certainly hope it is. As the economy fluctuates, that too has an impact on gang activity because there's economic hardships in families. They're looking for economic stability, and involvement in gangs is a perceived method to obtain that. So that may impact gang activity in our community. I stand ready for questions, or I'll hand it over to Mr. Adamitis.
Any questions for the lieutenant at this point? I just want to say thank you because obviously I like the direction your numbers are heading, and student safety and community safety is our primary concern here, so let's hope that those numbers hold.
And if you're interested in those numbers, I can always provide a written copy at some point in time if you
Thank
if you'd
you.
like.
Mr. Herron?
Just curious, is your department working closely with the task force that Dr. Sarvis described?
Yes, we are, absolutely.
Madam President, members of the school board, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council, my name is Vito Adamitis, and as Mr. Singer indicated, I'm the Director of Redevelopment, Neighborhood Services, and Public Safety. And you might wonder what all that means. Well, it's my job to try to help fix certain issues in our community and concerns that are raised by the residents and try to make things a little bit better, if I can sum it up a little bit. The City of Goleta places a very high emphasis in the area of public safety. And as a contract city with the largest contract in the county for law enforcement services with the Sheriff's Department, I'm pleased to share with you what some of these efforts are. Included in this effort is a motor traffic safety unit, which includes 4 motorcycle officers, the community resources deputy, and as mentioned by Lieutenant Willis, the school resources deputy, which I know all of you are very aware of, Deputy Scott Hunter. In addition, the city places a high emphasis on emergency preparedness, neighborhood watch, and our former traffic safety supervisor, who now is a code officer with the City of Goleta, Sergeant Greg Nordyke, some of you may know him. Thankfully, you don't see him in your rearview mirror anymore, but you do see him around town. He was one of the key people responsible for new legislation regarding traffic safety around school zones and reducing the speed limits. And we're very proud of that, and we're proud of the fact that he's on our staff. Along with the component of traffic safety, we know that traffic safety is also important around school zones and for your students going to school. As a matter of fact, today we had a crosswalk sting in our community, in fact in 2 areas of our community. And this is an ongoing effort, and it's part of our commitment to traffic safety and pedestrian safety in the community. So we would certainly like to continue to work collaboratively with the school districts in identifying areas where you need help or where you identify a concern related to traffic safety and your students getting to school. It's also important to point out that one of our efforts is Neighborhood Watch, working with residents and establishing neighborhood watch groups throughout the community. Many parents of school children and people who attend the campus here have participated in some of those neighborhood watch meetings. In fact, we just had one last night with almost 40 people turning out, which I thought is a great opportunity to share with all of you how important it is, the link between the city and the community. We believe that safe neighborhoods help to create safe school campuses. And we're committed to that important effort through the public safety efforts, neighborhood services of the city. And I stand here to share with you The invitation, if you have concerns or you have issues that you would like us to work with you on in addressing traffic safety or neighborhood issues, we stand ready to assist you. This concludes my brief presentation. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Adamaitis. Any comments or questions on this one? Mayor Seves?
I have no questions, Madam Midas. I just want to make a quick comment if I could. Being a member of the Leadership Council, being a member of this project from literally its inception, I wanted to acknowledge Dr. Sarvis and his commitment to the collaboration of the many groups that are involved. As many of you may have known, I did 30 years as a police officer in Santa Barbara. And one of the things that I found was that you had so many groups doing so many things, all trying to help the same issue. And with gang violence, we found that it didn't work. But now we've got everybody working together, communicating, and we're seeing the results here on campus, which is awfully exciting. And I hope that we should see some numbers system-wide to the other communities to see that this effort is actually being validated by the efforts of the many groups working together. But I want to, again, especially single out Dr. Sarvis because, you know, through his leadership, he takes care of our children during the day. And we as a council stand here to support you and our community, not only in what you do, but also for this project. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say it's really gratifying to hear how much effort and attention you are putting on the safety and the neighborhood safety around the schools. It's nice to hear that directly. So I highly appreciate that. Any other comments on this one? We do have public comment on this item, and that is Ms. Kate Smith.
Members of the Santa Barbara School District Board of Education, members of the Goleta City Council. Your mayor just said something that has triggered me, and I am going to ask for accommodation under Americans with Disabilities Act. I would like to have 2 extra minutes to speak so that I can speak without fear of being cut off abruptly. I do need to speak slowly at this point. May I be accommodated, please?
Mrs. Smith, you may certainly speak slowly, and we'll see where that takes you at the end of the 3 minutes.
Thank you. The mayor of Goleta articulated a vision for a new operating paradigm for our community so that we become the proverbial village that it takes to raise our children. Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, you mentioned something that has triggered me, and I am in crisis. Not just from this. So, I will digress for a second to say that when you said and acknowledged Brian Sarvis for taking care of our children, sir, that is not my truth. Brian Sarvis and the Santa Barbara School Board have blood on their hands. Now, regarding the presentation. The lieutenant wanted to take credit for the reduction, wanted to take credit for the collaboration for reduction of gang violence. Here's a chilling fact. Last year, the Board of Supervisors refused to fund the DA's truancy program So there was no truancy program last year at the Santa Barbara School District. And then, last month, Bud Andrews told the board that during that last year, when there was no truancy program, truancy was reduced by 50%. He did not know why, and he did not care why, nor did the board care why there was a reduction in truancy when the truancy program did not exist. Then he asked the board for thousands of dollars for their new truancy program for a secretary, and he said, I quote, "We want teeth to use against the truants. We want teeth." Please visit SB School Talk to read the main page about the school to prison pipeline. Yes, there are nonprofits and activities, but the school district identified students, but they did not help them. That's the big lie. Our students were not awarded activities and jobs. They were awarded expulsions, Casey waivers. Their families are outraged and suffering. There is death and destruction and youth violence in our community, and it is caused by your programs, by your policies, and by your practices.
30 seconds.
I would like to have a little more time. My comments are written.
Ms. Smith, that is extending your time already.
Only the administrators of these programs within the gang task force benefited. The gang task force, because the Board of Supervisors refused to allow any more money, they went to the Office of Emergency Services with a Cal GRIP grant. The Office of Emergency Services is for emergencies. It is for fire, flood, and hurricanes and earthquakes.
Thank you, Mrs.
I'm
Smith.
declaring there's an emergency situation in our community. We are the cause of
Mrs.
youth
Smith.
violence.